laws on the book dealing with restraining and containing the black community, and then allowing that little black boogeyman with a leather jacket that you make to be destroyed once you got the laws on the books that you needed. I hope you all understand what I'm saying. You know, I don't mean to offend nobody. I know brothers and sisters who was out here from the bottom of their heart, and those who were killed, they were sincere in struggling. I'm talking about the leadership that misled those young people. The young people were brave. I was one of them. I hope I was brave. I was scared as hell, but that didn't stop us. We believed that we had to do what we had to do, but somewhere I saw another hand, and it wasn't black. And even in the 60s, I complained about that other hand, but I was called a reactionary, because I saw this white hand behind black organizations that was supposed to be radical revolutionary organizations, and they were always referred to as our communist comrades. But the communist comrades all had the same names: Stein, Hearst, Bernstein, Finkelstein. They all had the same names. They all came from one white ethnic group who was our primary enemy, because they controlled all the real estate in our community, all the business in our community. If we were fighting for liberation, we had to fight them first. All right. But we didn't do that. They got us into some abstract, ideological struggle with the police, instead of taking control of the building where the grocery store was in on the corner so we could feed ourselves. Instead of taking over the Bronx Terminal Market so we could feed ourselves. They had us standing up cussing white boys who only had jobs at cop because we weren't smart enough to groom our boys to be the cops. We've been greatly misled by the ideologues whose ideology is rooted in the histology of the very people who oppress us. Now, I'm not saying that the Marxist tools of analysis, meaning ways of looking at a situation and picking it apart and tell you what's wrong, is necessarily bad for looking at capitalist white world. It is quite suited. But even Marx and Engels in their best writings give very few solution of what was to happen to capitalism after they had described what was wrong with it. And much of what we've been seeing has been hit and miss, mimicking what Lenin and his partners did in Russia. And if that is something people consider desirable, if you consider fascist dictatorship that murders millions of people every year to maintain control for an elite that still have their secret relationship with the capitalist elite, something to aspire for, then I say keep aspiring, but don't do it in our community. Let me see if I could try to just do like I do in class and do little lessons. And I was trying to get some meanings together, so I was looking at things like political philosophy. And political philosophy is reflection on political phenomena and the attempt to understand them and the discussion on their significance. So if we were going to talk about the political philosophy of Africa, but we were going to use political philosophy that was molded in Europe, then on whose political phenomena were you reflecting? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you want to free, we'll take Ghana, but I'm going to use the political philosophy derived from England to free Ghana, and political philosophy says that I must be at least reflecting on the political phenomena, meaning the situation that has historically grown politically out of the experiences of the people I'm about to free. But I'm not going to take their experience as being a valid paradigm or valid model to examine. I'm going to take the experience of their enemy as a model to examine. Then I'm going to bring that experience and impose it on them in terms of trying to create institutions to bring about political solution. It is stupid and ridiculous. And it has failed all over Africa and left us nothing but hundreds of thousands of dead. Of course, the so-called quote-unquote capitalist imperialist from outside is causing a problem, but his problem is much successful because of our internal problems that we brought in with him on our minds. And so that's what I'm trying to speak to. And then I looked up ideology. Ideology is the study of ideas, their nature and source. So if I want a free African people, then, but I'm looking at ideas, their nature and source, that is fundamentally European or at best Asian, if I'm dealing with the Mao syndrome, how can I then go and be significant in dealing with ideas, their nature and source in Africa, if I have not reflected or studied them at all? And so I walk into Nigeria and I tell the Yoruba people, you and your institutions and your philosophy and your concept of reality and your notion of life and your value on life and your concept of cosmogony isn't worth a damn. Just kill it, destroy it, and wipe it out, because I got Marxism that the white folks gave me in Europe to bring here for you. And then I say I come to eliminate colonialism and imperialism, but I bring another brand of psychological and cultural colonialism and imperialism to do it with. And because I can teach you how to learn this in slick little pamphlets, and we can use some slick little terms like criticism, self-criticism. If you look in every African philosophy, they had criticism and self-criticism down to science. The whole notion of a shoe in Yoruba has to do with criticism and self-criticism, the self-examination of your process of transformation. We had all those things in our philosophies. But our revolutionary thinkers have not studied African philosophy. The revolutionary thinkers are not studying African institutional construct. The revolutionary thinkers are not trying to understand the African value system, but yet they want to come in and liberate them. How can they? They have not been able to use any of those things to liberate us. And we are modified white people. We are. That's that post-slavery trauma syndrome I've been talking about. It made us into modified white people. What we're trying to do at affairs like this is to demodify you and get back to being black people. And myself included, my being able to study and read is helping me get back to black. But my point is, we have a dangerous situation still going on. I was over at the 7-Pack, and the first day I walk in there, we had a bloody war between the African Americans, because Abdul Kalimat and his boys and those that he had brought in, who were all the little Marxist people set up in different cities, had gotten there and they were going to represent African Americans. And here I come by myself. For a minute I thought I was the only nationalist or Pan-Africanist there. But I'm lucky. Alambe Brath came walking through the door, and Viola Plummer and Coltrane Cimarang came walking through the door. Now, we have our differences with their Marxist bent, but they seem to be trying to bend themselves more towards the Pan-African development, and I hope that transformation grows, but I can't speak for them. But what began to occur there was, I'm sitting and realizing that somebody was put in charge of informing Africans in America of the Pan-African Conference and then organizing them to come, and that somebody happened to be a Marxist, and the first thing he did was to make sure no Pan-Africanists from North America got to the conference. Anybody who was around in 1972, he was one of the players there, and they did the same thing and made a mess of the conference in Tanzania. So that most African American who went could not even go in. They were just there. Had to send in a representative delegation. Not that conferences are so important. The point I'm trying to make is that our movement have been taken over by some very strange persons. Skip Gates, where did he get his education from? Cornel West, who was his backers and financiers? Al Poussaint, who is his backers and financiers? What's the little sister that has the locks and she's doing the writing? And I know Alice Walker. Who is backing Alice? That, I'm not taking away from Alice's talent. I'm talking about Alice's allegiance. Big difference. All right? Maya Angelou. I'm not taking away from Maya's talent. I'm talking about Maya Angelou's allegiance. All right? And we've got these people have been strategically placed in position to influence how we see the world, and we're not looking behind them to see who is doing the influencing. And I'm saying it's the Jew. They own them. And by owning them, they've exercised extreme control over our socialization. So if you go back and look at all of the major organizations, NAACP, the Jews. Urban League, look up at who was the early presidents. There again, the Jews. Negro College Fund, the Jews. So that Howard University can't even have Khalid Muhammad there because the Jews is going to get the money cut off from black colleges in the South now.